Hi everyone, it's Sandy and today I'm filming my July wrap-up. This month I read 14 books, which I am very happy about. And yes, I am wearing the same outfit that I wore in my previous video, and that's because I filmed those videos at the same time. My intentions were to combine my book haul and my wrap-up in one video like I did last month, but when I was editing the video, my book haul ended up being a decent amount of length. It was like about 4 minutes, and since I read 14 books in July, I know that my wrap-up would be very long and I didn't want to have a super long video, so I decided to separate those videos and upload them separately. The first book that I read is Reason to Breathe by Rebecca Donovan. This is a book that I've had on my bookshelf for a really long time and I finally got to it. This book follows a girl named Emma and she has a really bad home life. That's all I'm going to say about this book. This book was a really emotional read. This is definitely a all the feels type of book. I felt joy, sadness, anger, and even fear, which doesn't happen that often when I'm reading a book. But when I was reading this one, I just felt straight up fear for the main character's life. I teared up several times throughout the story. I became so invested in the plot and the characters. This is not a typical fluffy contemporary. It's so much more. The ending of this book kind of killed me, to be honest. Going into this book, I knew that there were more books, but I wasn't sure if it was like a series or a companion series. But there is a sequel to this book, which I'm happy about. The ending of this book is one of the worst cliffhangers that I've ever read, and I'm getting really emotional about this book at the moment if you couldn't tell, but this was a really good book, and I give it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins. I've been wanting to read this book since I've heard of it from Booksplosion, and I finally picked it up. This book is about a girl named Harper who gains an ability to do some like magical things, and she ends up having to protect a guy named David who happens to be her least favorite person. I didn't love this book, but it was still a quick and fun read. I didn't really connect to the characters, but I do like the concept of like magical abilities. I always like books where a character gains abilities or have abilities. I think that's a really cool thing to read about. And I ended up giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm not sure if I'm going to pick up the sequel. I've heard a lot of negative things about the sequel, people not liking the sequel as much as the first book, and since I didn't love the first book, I'm probably not going to like the sequel, so I'm not going to pick the sequel up anytime soon, but maybe someday. The next book that I read is Falling Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes, and I'm also going to mention that I've also read Rebel Spring and Gathering Darkness this month, which is the second and third book in the Falling Kingdoms series. I didn't read Rebel Spring right after I read Falling Kingdoms. I read like a few more books and then I picked up Rebel Spring, and then I picked up Gathering Darkness right after finishing Rebel Spring. And I don't own those two books, I just checked them out from the library and I'm loving this series. I can't believe I didn't read it sooner because it's so good. If you didn't already know, this is a fantasy series. I'm not even going to bother trying to explain what the series is about because there's so many things and I don't have the words for it. One of my favorite things about this whole series is the cast of characters. I love all the characters, good and bad. I love like the different storylines. This series is just so good and I'm so happy that I'm finally caught up, and I cannot wait for the fourth book, which is called Frozen Tides, and that's coming out in December, I believe. I give Falling Kingdoms a 4 out of 5 stars, and I give Rebel Spring and Gathering Darkness a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read is The Equinox by K.K. Allen. This is the second book in the Summer Solstice series. This book is about a girl named Kat who moves to live with her grandmother after the unexpected death of her mother. She's experiencing these dreams and visions, and in this book you find out more about what's going on with her. It has to do with some supernatural ability. If you're interested in that, go check it out because I really enjoy this book. Going into this book, I was surprised to learn about some of the new things that's introduced in this world. I thought it was really cool and interesting to read about since I've never read about it in a book before. I don't want to say what this new thing is, but I like it. I really like it. There's just so much more about this world that we are learning about, and I loved learning about it along with the main character Kat. I really like Kat's character. I think she's definitely grown from the first book. I love that she can fend for herself and she doesn't make irrational decisions. New characters are introduced in this book and I loved some of the new characters. There are a few plot twists in this book that definitely surprised me. There is one that I was like kind of predicting that the main character also happened to be predicting, but we were both wrong. and it was just a really pleasant surprise to read about this plot twist. I love the whole mystery aspect in this book. It kept me guessing, and I didn't want to put this book down because of it. Overall, I think it's a really great sequel. It surprised me in many ways. I can't wait for the next book because the cliffhanger though. I give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is a book that I've actually listened to as an audiobook, and that book is Just One Day by Gail Foreman. This book follows a girl named Allison who is on this like European tour, and she meets this guy and they both have an adventure to go to Paris for just one day. So I thought this book was okay, didn't love it, didn't hate it. I didn't really like Allison's character for a majority of the book, especially when she first started college. That was really frustrating for me to read, but her character did grow on me by the end of the story. And I also didn't really like the love interest either. The ending wasn't satisfying. I wanted more. I know that there is a second book in the guy's POV, and I know that there is a novella which is about what happened after the events of the ending of the last book. So hopefully that novella is what I'm expecting. What I really liked about this book is that it focused more on Allison finding herself than on the love story, and I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is Afterworlds by Scott Westerfeld. This book is about a girl named Darcy who's writing a book and is in the process of getting it published. And so in this book you get chapters in Darcy's perspective, and then you also get chapters of the book that she's writing. And I really love that concept because we basically get 2 books in one. I just really loved reading Darcy's perspective. I think I enjoyed her perspective more than the book that she was writing. I just found it really interesting seeing what she's experiencing in the publishing industry. Lizzie is the main character in Darcy's story, and I like Darcy's relationship more than Lizzie's relationship. Lizzie's relationship just didn't feel real to me, and I loved seeing the development of Darcy's relationship. Darcy's story does get a bit confusing at times, but I did find it really interesting. Overall, I give this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Wicked Will Rise by Danielle Page. This is the second book in Dorothy Must Die. Honestly, I don't really have much to say about this book. I didn't enjoy it as much as I did with the first book. This book is pretty short, as you can see by how thin it is, especially compared to the first book. I still liked it, but I thought it was okay overall, and I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read is for school, and it is Acts of Faith by Ibu Patel. I didn't give this book a rating because I really didn't know what to rate it, so yeah. Moving on. Then I read Made for You by Melissa Marr. This book is about a girl named Eva who wakes up in the hospital after being involved in a hit and run. She eventually develops this ability to see the death of another person. This doesn't happen every single time someone touches her, but sometimes when a person would touch her, she would get a vision where she's in that person's perspective and she would see how they died. And in this book there's this killer who's after Eva. He's basically in love with Eva, and he's killing other girls trying to get her attention. What I really liked about this book is the mystery aspect, trying to see who the killer is. I also like that we get chapters told in the killer's perspective. It was so crazy and so creepy. While I was reading it, I was reminded of The Body Finder by Kimberly Durting. And if you like The Body Finder, then check out this book, or vice versa, because I think you would enjoy those books if you like this type of book. For a majority of this book, it does have a contemporary feel to it, and I like that about this book. I love the mother-daughter relationship development. The romance was okay, didn't love it. I did enjoy this book, and I give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read is a book that I checked out from my library, and that is White Hot Kiss by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This book has to do with gargoyles and demons, and basically in this world, gargoyles are the ones that protect the humans from demons, and gargoyles are called wardens. So our main character is half demon and half warden, and Layla actually lives with a warden family, so she's like the adopted daughter, and she has a brother named Zane who is not related to her since she's adopted, and she's had a crush on him for the longest time. Being that she's half demon, she has the ability to suck the soul out of someone. If she kisses a human, she basically sucks the soul out of them. And then we meet Roth, who is a demon, and demons have no soul. Things are gonna happen between Roth and Layla. So as you can tell, there is somewhat of a love triangle in here. It wasn't a major thing in this book, but I'm not liking it. Kind of already have a feeling who she's gonna end up with, and I hope my feeling is correct because I do want her to end up with a certain person. I didn't enjoy this book as much as I did with other Jennifer L. Armentrout books. I really love the whole concept of the wardens and demons, Like, the whole gargoyle thing is just really different and unique. It was interesting to learn about, and of course, with all of Jennifer L. Armentrout books, I loved the romance. Not the love triangle, but the romance. At the moment, I'm not in a rush to read the second book. I did place a hold of the audiobook of the second book from my library, so whenever that's available, I'll listen to it. I give this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Avalon by Mindy Arnett. The main character, Jeff, works for a guy named Hammer, and the reason he is working for him is because he wants to buy back a spaceship that belongs to his parents, and Hammer is in possession of that spaceship. Jeff and his group of friends basically steal spaceships for Hammer, and every time they steal a spaceship, they get paid, and Jeff is working to buy back the spaceship called Avalon, which belongs to his parents. Then Jeff and his group of friends get an assignment to find a lost spaceship that was lost in this area that's very dangerous. This area is a very dangerous place because people go missing in this area. The spaceships don't really function properly, and so Avalon is like the only spaceship that doesn't really get affected in this area. So Jeff and his group of friends take Avalon to go retrieve this lost spaceship. That was a really long summary. I didn't like this book, to be honest. I did like the middle part of this book, but eventually I found myself just reading to be done with this book. I didn't connect to the characters, but I liked the plot and I liked how it ended. I think there is a second book, but the way this book ended was really satisfying. The ending was alright, this is how it ended, and I don't feel the need to read the second book, which I don't plan on reading the second book because I didn't really like this book anyways. So in the end, I give this book a 2 out of 5 stars. And lastly, I read Firefight by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the Reckoners trilogy, I believe. I checked this book out from the library, so I don't have a copy with me. I really enjoyed it, not as much as the first book. I like where the storyline is going and being introduced to the new villains of this book. I give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. That is it for my wrap up, and if you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, let me know down below. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!